Today we're taking a look at all the reasons you might want to buy the DJI FLIP here over the $199 DJI Neo. The first reason is quite obvious. The FLIP has a 1/1.3-inch CMOS sensor, in fact the same sensor as the Mini 4 Pro, and color profiles like the Log M 10-bit, and can record videos in 4K up to 60 FPS HDR and 4K 100 FPS slow motion. As for the Neo here, we have 4K 30 FPS and 1080p 60 FPS, as well as a normal color profile only, so you're quite limited in terms of resolution and frame rates, which is also why the Neo has a cheaper price and costs half of the DJI FLIP here. So if image quality is something you're looking for in a drone, the DJI FLIP is definitely the better option for sure. Now, moving over to low light videos, this is practically impossible to get with the Neo because of the smaller sensor, the smaller aperture, so you'll end up with mostly grain in your footage, which of course is something you can smoothen out in post later, but at the end the Neo is not something you would want to get to capture those cinematic low light videos. As for the FLIP, which has the same sensor and f1.7 aperture that we see in the Mini 4 Pro, where the only feature separating the Mini 4 Pro and the FLIP is the actual low light video mode that we have on the Mini 4 Pro, which is not present on the FLIP. However, the FLIP has amazing low light videos in my opinion, and that's thanks to the D-Log M color profile. You will also be able to get the most out of the drone in daylight and low light when using this profile, because it has 10-bit, more dynamic range, more colors, and it's easier to color correct and grade those low light videos. And just to mention, flying these two, both the Neo and the FLIP here in low light, there's actually no issues flying these drones themselves, but you need to use a dedicated RC remote controller like the RCN2, the RCN3, or the RC2 controller in order to prevent some flyaways. And I was testing this with the Neo actually in my driveway, and I just couldn't fly anywhere. It was all over the place and didn't want to hover in place at all. So that's something you will expect when flying these with your smartphone. So in order to fly any of these drones in low light, you need to connect to a dedicated RC remote. The remote I prefer to use is the RC2. So just keep that in mind. You can still fly both of these drones in low light, but you need to connect them to a remote. Now, talking about the next reason here to get the FLIP over the DJI Neo here, which I think a lot of people expected to see when it was released, and that is a dedicated micro SD card slot, which we have here on the FLIP. The Neo only comes with 22 gigabytes of internal storage, which is fine in most cases when you just want to go out and do some quick shots, practice some FPV, or do shorter hikes with follow mode. But in the long run, this gets quite annoying, especially when not using a controller or your smartphone. There's no indication from the drone that the storage is about to run out. You only get the message when it's actually full. So I would personally prefer a firmware update that added a voice prompt from, let's say, 5 gigabytes or something. So when you reach 5 gigabytes, the drone will give you a message and say that there's 5 gigabytes left of storage, and then on 4, then on 3 and 2, and so on. I think DJI should work this out, and I think this will help a lot of people, including myself. The worst thing is when you're out shooting, you just want to capture that last sequence and you realize that the storage is full. And even though the quick transfer is relatively fast, it's still annoying when you just want to capture that last sequence. Now, the FLIP on the other hand has, I think, 2 gigabytes of internal storage, which is held for the firmware updates, so it's nothing to be excited about. But what we do have is a dedicated SD card slot here, so you will be able to get more footage before having to transfer the files. The SD card I've been using with the FLIP here is the Lexar 256. This is actually 128 gigabyte that I'm using right now, but this is what I recommend, so I'll leave a link to these down in the description below just in case you want to grab any of these cards. Now, moving over to battery life with these two, there's actually a huge difference between the FLIP and the Neo here. So the Neo has a rated 18 minutes of flight time, which in real life use gives you more or less 12 to 14 minutes, give or take the environment, the wind, how far you fly, and the time it takes to get back to the home point. The Flip, on the other hand, has 31 minutes of flight time, which in real life use gives you approximately 24 to 26 minutes given the environment you're flying in. And for my longest flight, I've been getting about 22 minutes of flight time as of now before I flew back. And even when I flew back to land, I still had 30% battery life left. So basically, if you want the best image quality possible, you want the automated flight modes, the tracking, longer flight time, and somewhat unlimited storage in terms of using a bigger SD card, well, the Flip here is the clear winner and the reason to buy over the Neo. However, from my experience over the past 5 months of using the Neo here, the battery life hasn't really been an issue, and I mainly use this drone to capture quick shots and follow me around in different places, so it's always been close enough to just grab it and then change the battery. Moving over to photos, the Flip here has 48 megapixel photos and the Neo has 12 megapixel photos. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do a proper comparison of the photo capabilities between these two because it's been snowing and raining every other day here, so I haven't really been able to get those photos. But I've taken a few low light photos with these two, and I think that gives you a good indication of which one looks better. Now let's talk about features. Even though these have some similar features here, the Flip has the advantage with a few extra features like master shots, panorama photos, 4K slow motion like I mentioned earlier, D-Log M10-bit, and of course the forward-facing infrared sensing system, which sits here on the front here of the drone. Now, when it comes to this sensing system, this has some limits, and ever since I got the Flip, I basically just turn them off because it does more harm than good in my opinion, especially when it comes to foggy environments, which we have a lot of here these days because it's winter. And also when it comes to tracking, I've also noticed that this actually prevents the drone from following smoothly, especially when it comes to tracking in the forest where you might have some branches hanging over the trail. So for that reason, I basically turned this off, which has created a smoother flight pattern. And for those times I didn't turn it off, I basically had to connect my phone in certain cases and then just redirect the drone to a different spot for then to continue the follow mission. But with that said, if you turn it off, the Flip has some amazing tracking results with the D-Log M10-bit as well. So I definitely think this is a keeper and a huge reason to buy over the DJI Neo here. With all that said, I still like both of these drones and I will still continue using both of these drones, but from my perspective and what I planned this year, I can see myself using the Flip just as much as the DJI Neo here, maybe a little bit more because the image quality, 4K slow motion, and also that I have a dedicated SD card. But in all honesty, will the Flip replace my DJI Neo? No, I don't think so. I think both of these are fantastic drones and it gives us the option to choose between quality and versatility. So if you would ever want to test out FPV, for example, get the Neo FPV bundle. But if you just want the tracking and the image quality, get the DJI Flip. And of course, both drones gonna have their pros and cons, and there will always be something we wish we had. So if you want everything, every single thing, I would suggest getting the Mini 4 Pro, more expensive, but it has everything. This is the absolute best drone that DJI has made in my opinion, and from my experience, there's no major cons. It's only the close proximity tracking, I would say, but other than that, this is the king of drones in my opinion, because it's under 250 grams, has all the features as my Air 3S and all the bigger drones. So Mini 4 Pro is my best recommendation, but if for self-tracking, I would go for maybe the Flip because it has the quality. So there you have my reasons to buy the Flip over the Neo. Let me know your reasons below. Which one would you buy if you could only choose between these two, the Flip or the Neo? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a like as well, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. So again, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.